The movie opens with three kids named Jimmy, Sean, and Dave, playing hockey on a street. However, their ball is soon sucked into a sewer, leaving the boys annoyed. After thinking about what to do, a rebellious Jimmy finds a patch of fresh cement, and writes his name on it. Sean does the same, but when it's Dave's turn, a man steps out of his car and scolds them for destroying municipal property. He has a badge and a handcuff, so the kids believe he's a cop and are terrified. He then asks the kids for their addresses, and learns that Jimmy and Sean live on the same street, but Dave lives a few blocks away. And so, the man decides to drive Dave home and talk with his mom about his mischievous behavior. Dave is hesitant, but the man aggressively pushes him into the vehicle. Once inside, another man wearing a crucifix ring looks at Dave and gives him a grin. The three then drive away, while Sean and Jimmy watch them in fear and confusion. Afterward, the duo quickly finds their dads and informs them about what happened. The adults are confused and scared, wondering why the cops had to take Dave away simply for writing on wet cement. Elsewhere, we see a scared Dave in the basement of a house, revealing that the two men have kidnapped him. It turns out they are pedophiles who take turns abusing the young boy. But a few days later, Dave somehow manages to free himself from his captors and escapes into the woods. He reunites with his family, but it's clear that the incident has severely traumatized him, and he will never be the same again. The scene then cuts to 25 years later, where we see an adult Dave picking up his son from school. The two also arrive on the same street where Dave used to play, and he's disturbed as he recalls the horrors he endured as a child. Elsewhere, we see Jimmy, who lives nearby and runs a local supermarket. He's approached by his teenage daughter, Katie, who tells him that she's going to a party tonight. Jimmy agrees, but advises her not to stay late because tomorrow is her younger sister's first communion. Later, Katie gets in her car, and is startled to discover her boyfriend, Brendan, in the backseat. She warns him that if her dad catches him sneaking into her car, he will kill him. The two then kiss and decide to meet tomorrow as planned. Not far away, we meet Sean, who now works as a homicide detective, alongside his colleague, Whitey. Later that night, Dave is drinking at a bar, when Katie appears with her friends. He recognizes her, and watches on as the girls climb onto the counter and start dancing and enjoying themselves. Around midnight, Dave returns home, shockingly covered in blood and with a slight cut on his abdomen. His wife, Celeste, is terrified to see his state, so Dave frantically explains that a mugger attempted to rob him, and the two got into a fight. Celeste tends to his wounds, while Dave explains how he bashed the mugger's head, and worries that the man could be dead. He begins crying, so Celeste comforts him and assures him that it was not his fault. The next day, the cops receive a call from a boy who claims that he and his friend found a car, with traces of blood on it. They provide the location, but when the cops ask for their names, they hang up without responding. The police soon arrive at the scene and discover the blood-stained car, but there's no body. Elsewhere, Jimmy gets a call from his employee, who says that Katie still hasn't arrived at the store. Jimmy gets up to check her room, but she isn't there either. Later, while Jimmy is at the store, Brendan arrives with his younger brother, Silent Ray, who is mute. Brendan doesn't see Katie, so he casually asks Jimmy about her since today is her shift. But an annoyed Jimmy only responds that Katie's sister is making her first communion at church today. Elsewhere, Sean and Whitey arrive at the crime scene, and learn from another cop that the blood-stained car belongs to Katie. This greatly worries Sean, as he knows she is Jimmy's daughter. Meanwhile, at the church, Jimmy is attending his youngest daughter's communion, and becomes upset when he doesn't see Katie there. Celeste, on the other hand, reads the newspaper, and is concerned when she can't find any info or update about the mugger who attacked her husband. Later, Jimmy finally arrives at the crime scene, surrounded by cops, and he is shocked to see his daughter's car there. Sean, meanwhile, has reached a nearby lake, as it turns out the dogs have found something. He then gets a call, informing him that a man has shown up claiming to be the girl's father. Jimmy is with a couple of thugs who have started to get violent, and Sean recognizes them as the neighborhood criminals known as the Savage Brothers. Afterward, Sean meets with Jimmy and tries to calm him down, saying his daughter is only listed as missing. but he suddenly gets a call from his team, informing him that there has been a discovery. Meanwhile, Celeste becomes increasingly worried as she watches the news about the blood-stained car and a missing woman. She seems to suspect her husband is involved with this. Sean soon catches up with the police and is horrified to discover Katie's body inside a well in the park. She appears to have been brutally beaten and suffered 2 gunshot wounds to her head, which reportedly caused her death. Just then, Jimmy tries to force his way to the crime scene, but is detained by the cops. He frantically asks Sean if his daughter is dead. When the detective doesn't answer anything, Jimmy takes this as a yes and becomes distraught. Later, he arrives at the morgue and confirms his daughter's body. He and his wife, Annabeth, sit down with Sean and Whitey to discuss the investigation. They talk about Dave's case from many years ago, and it turns out that Celeste and Annabeth are cousins, making Jimmy and Dave family. We also learn that Katie is actually the daughter of Jimmy's first wife, who passed away long ago. Here, Whitey questions Jimmy about the time he spent in prison for robbery. But this only irritates Jimmy, who responds that it happened 16 years ago, and his daughter's death has nothing to do with this. Later, the detectives meet an old woman, who lives near the crime scene where Katie was murdered. She reveals that she heard Katie greeting someone with a hi, before a loud gunshot was heard. This means that the young girl knew the killer. Afterward, the detectives question Katie's friends, and learn that she was planning to flee to Las Vegas with Brendan to start a new life. On the other hand, Dave is surprised by Jimmy, who came to pay a visit at Dave's place. Jimmy notices the injury on Jimmy's hands, and asks him about it, but Dave gives him a flimsy excuse. Next, the detectives go to visit Brendan, and he's distraught to find out that his girlfriend is dead. He admits that the two met before Katie went to the bar, and were planning to flee the following day. He also reveals that their relationship was kept secret, because Jimmy hates Brendan's family for some reason. Just then, his brother, Silent Ray, arrives with his buddy, John, and they go to watch TV. The detectives then ask Brendan to take a polygraph test to confirm that everything he said is true. The next day, Whitey informs Sean that Brendan has passed the polygraph, and they decide to interrogate everyone who was at the bar that night. They notice that Dave is one of the possible witnesses, and decide to approach him. Later, the two catch up with Dave, who is taking his son to school. They question him about Katie, and Dave informs them that he saw her that night, and said hello. He claims that the girls left the bar 15 minutes before him, which was around 12:45 a.m. After separating from Dave, the detectives begin discussing, and Whitey admits he has suspicions about Dave. He points out Dave's injured hand, and the fact that he was the last person to see Katie. But Sean doesn't think so, because he knows Dave well enough. The next day, the detectives meet with Jimmy, and inform him that his daughter was planning to run away to Las Vegas with Brendan. This infuriates Jimmy, and he accuses Brendan of being the killer. However, the detectives disagree, as Brendan passed the polygraph test, and clearly loved Katie a lot. Sean then asks Jimmy why he hates the boy so much, to which he explains that it's because of Brendan's father, who was called Just Ray. He reveals that Just Ray was a criminal, and the two of them never got along. Just Ray abandoned his wife while she was pregnant with their second child, so Jimmy believes Brendan is similar to his father. Later, the detectives return to the station, and discover that the gun that killed Katie was fired from a .38 special revolver. The surprising thing is the same firearm was used 18 years ago, in the robbery of a liquor store. Elsewhere, Brendan is grieving for his girlfriend when Silent Ray arrives to comfort him. He tells his brother that their mom said he's better off without Katie, and will find someone else again. Meanwhile, the detectives arrive at the liquor store where the robbery happened 18 years ago. They meet the owner, and are shocked to find out that the robber was none other than Just Ray, who was a former employee of the store. In another scene, Celeste arrives home late at night, and Dave asks where she was. She tells him that she was in her car, thinking about the day Katie was killed. Dave then asks if she thinks he's the culprit, because ever since then, Celeste has been acting repulsed around him. She responds that she's confused, and questions why Dave didn't inform the police about the mugger, and why there's no news about him. This upsets Dave so much that he finally opens up about his traumatic experience as a child, when he was abused by pedophiles. Celeste is shocked by the revelation, while the disturbed Dave leaves the house to clear his mind. The next day, Whitey informs Sean that he secretly checked Dave's car the previous night, and found bloodstains in the front seat, and in the trunk. It turns out that the blood type in the trunk matches Katie's, which is O positive. The detectives then interrogate Dave, but he doesn't provide them with any useful information. He simply claims that his car was reported missing, and asks the detectives to find and question the thieves instead. Elsewhere, Jimmy meets with the Savage brothers, whom he had ordered to conduct a private investigation to find the killer. They tell him that this morning, the detectives came and took Dave to the station. This means that he has something to do with the case, which shocks Jimmy. Elsewhere, the detectives review Just Ray's background, and discover that after being released for a robbery, he was arrested again for other illegal activities. But for some reason, he wasn't punished or charged for those offenses. The detectives then meet with Ray's arresting officer to question what exactly happened. It turns out that Just Ray didn't serve a sentence back then because he cooperated with the FBI. He ratted out Jimmy's robbery, and sent him to prison for 2 years. The interesting thing is that 2 months after Jimmy's release, Just Ray mysteriously vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, Jimmy returns home to find Celeste waiting for him. She nervously tells him that she has decided to separate from Dave, because she's scared of him. Celeste finally explains everything, including how Dave arrived home covered in blood, and made up a story about a mugger the night Katie was killed. Upon hearing this, Jimmy is shocked, and asks if she thinks Dave killed Katie. Celeste begins to cry, and responds yes with a heavy heart. In another scene, Brendan is questioned by the detectives again, and he claims that his dad didn't have any guns. He also reveals that his dad is still alive, as he sends them $500 every month. And so, the detectives inform him that the gun used to kill Katie is the same one Just Ray used in the robbery 18 years ago. However, Brendan insists that it's impossible, as his dad didn't own any guns. Even upon relentless questioning, he stands his ground, leaving the detectives with no choice but to let him go. Meanwhile, Dave is approached by the Savage brothers, who invite him to drink. Dave suspects something is up, but he accepts the invitation anyway. Returning to the police station, Sean and Whitey listen to the 911 recording, which they never listened to, where a boy had called to report the bloodstained car. But they are shocked when they hear the boy accidentally referred to the victim as her, meaning they knew the victim was a woman. This is suspicious because, at that time, the car was abandoned on the street, while the body was far away in the park. Elsewhere, the Savage brothers tell Dave several entertaining stories, and force him to drink a lot. But then, Jimmy also soon arrives, and begins drinking alongside them. Meanwhile, Brendan returns home, and checks the attic where he had hidden his dad's gun, but we only see the gun cover there. Soon enough, Silent Ray and John arrive home, and Brendan casually greets his brother. Elsewhere, we see Dave throwing up behind the bar, followed by Jimmy and his men. Here Jimmy suddenly reveals the story of how he murdered Just Ray several years ago, in the same spot, and threw his body in the river. He explains that it was not just because he turned him into the cops, but it was because his first wife had cancer, and he couldn't be with her in her last days because of Just Ray. On the other hand, Brendan asks his brother who he hates, but the boy answers no one. He then asks who he loves, and Silent Ray responds that he loves his brother. Meanwhile, Dave realizes that Jimmy suspects him of Katie's murder, and pleads that it's not the case. He reveals that he actually killed a child molester that night, who was assaulting a kid in a car. But Jimmy doesn't believe him, and questions why he wouldn't tell this to Celeste. Dave desperately pleads his innocence, but Jimmy pulls out a dagger, and promises to let him live if he admits the truth. Returning to Brendan, he pulls out the gun cover, and demands that his brother confess his love for him. But Silent Ray suddenly begins to panic and tries to leave, so Brendan starts hitting him. John also attempts to flee, but Brendan stops him and brutally beats him as well. By this point, he accuses his brother of killing his girlfriend. But then, John quickly points a gun at Brendan. Luckily, the detectives also arrive, and manage to restrain the kid. Meanwhile, Jimmy continues to pressure Dave to confess, and promises to spare his life if he tells the truth. In a desperate attempt to save himself, a distressed Dave admits that he murdered Katie. It is because she reminded him of the youth he never had. And upon hearing this, an enraged Jimmy brutally stabs Dave in the gut several times before throwing away the dagger. But Dave is still alive, so Jimmy shoots him to finally put an end to his life. The next day, Sean meets with Jimmy and informs him that they have finally found the culprits, Silent Ray and John. It turns out the kids had stolen the gun and attempted to menace a random car, which turned out to be Katie's. John tried to scare her with the gun, but it accidentally went off. A terrified Katie then hit them with the car door and tried to run away. Fearing she would tell on them, they chased her into the park, where Silent Ray beat her with a hockey stick, and John shot her to death. Of course, Jimmy is shocked, and can't believe that he killed an innocent man. Sean states that he's looking for Dave, as the body of a convicted pedophile has been found in the woods. But Jimmy denies seeing him, and tells Sean that he should have solved the case a bit sooner. Upon hearing this, Sean realizes what Jimmy has done, and is left bewildered. Sean then asks Jimmy if he will also send Celeste $500 per month, but the latter doesn't respond. Later, Jimmy returns home, and confesses to his wife that he killed the innocent Dave, and threw his body into the river. Surprisingly, Annabeth reassures him that it's not his fault, as he only did it out of love for his family. She adds that it's all Celeste's fault, as she babbled about her husband's business without knowing the whole truth. In the final scene, a neighborhood parade is going on, where a confused Celeste is wandering through the crowd. A float with children passes by, and she frantically tries to call her son. But he doesn't respond to her, as he blames her for separating from his dad. Meanwhile, Sean is also watching the parade, and he notices Jimmy in the crowd. He mimics a gunshot gesture at Jimmy, implying that he's going to make him pay for his actions, but Jimmy seems chill, and doesn't seem to be affected by his threats. The movie then concludes with the sight of the names Sean, Jimmy, and Dave scratched into the sidewalk 25 years ago.